What's up, my brothers? Hugh here, as you know. It is Sunday. I just performed a wedding at our Post Commons. One of our main gals got married. It was kind of cool to be back in the old saddle doing some clergy duties, but it's over, and then I cruised out to watch the rest of the Masters golf tournament. If you didn't see it, Hideki Matsuyama, who's a man from Japan, won it. First Japanese player to ever win the Masters. They think it might turn him into a billionaire because of the amount of cultural change he has just opened the door for. As you know, Japanese people are passionate about golf and Scotch whiskey. And now golf is going to go berserk on Japan. But if you watch that, at the end of the thing, most of the time when people win the Masters, they jump up in the air, they try to, like Phil Mickelson. They raise their hands, and like a triumphant warrior like Tiger Woods did the other year, a couple of years ago. But Hideki, when he won it, he barely even looked at the crowd. It almost looked like he was embarrassed. And gave a very humble hug to his own caddy and to the opposing players. And then it's almost like he was trying to walk off the course as fast as he could, just so he could, not make a big show of himself. And then when he was kind of getting ready for the interview, they showed a picture of his caddy that went back out to the 18th green and then pulled the flag off. And after he did that, he put the flag back in the ground and did a traditional Japanese bow to maybe the flagpole, maybe the green, but just sort of honoring the course. But it's just so weird to see the humility of some men versus the arrogance of others. Maybe some of you caught Brooks Koepka's interview after he missed the cut, and he was dropping F-bombs, and I just remember going, wow. And then you see Hideki, and it's just beautiful. It's like he comes from a culture that honors humility. It's weird to see that, because in America, we don't. We like humble men, but we also like arrogant men. And in Japan, arrogance would dishonor. It would dishonor your family, would dishonor the culture. And so I don't know. I was blessed to see Hideki do this. Reminded me of a movie called The Last Samurai. I wrote about it in a book called Sacrilege, where I was talking about following Jesus as if he is our sensei. Sensei means servant. So in Japanese culture, if you have a sensei, it's somebody that you don't just sort of study their teachings. You go along with them and you do whatever they say. And there's a quote. I just looked up Last Samurai quotes. It's a great quote from the movie. Not a big Tom Cruise fan, but let's see here. It says that, and he's speaking of the Japanese people. He says, they are an intriguing people. From the moment they wake, they devote themselves to the perfection of whatever they pursue. And he says, I have never seen such discipline, and I am surprised to learn that the word samurai means to serve. And so it's kind of a cool quote just about that idea of, like, when we sign up to follow Jesus, it is not the traditional American approach where we just go about our lives and then we add a little bit of Jesus on to the end of the weekends, maybe at church, maybe a little devotional time with some brothers. But in the culture of the Japanese and in the culture of the time that Jesus said, go and make disciples, he literally was meaning the words sensei. So go find a master, follow me as your master. And when Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ, he was going, just as I was devoted to my sensei's teaching and his way of life, so do that with me. And that's really what sort of evangelization of the world and then discipleship of the world was about. So I don't know, it's just kind of a challenge. We're coming to the end of the book of James. I hope it's been an encouragement to you. Practical book on wisdom. I'm just going to kind of read through some final thoughts out of the Message translation and maybe throw a few thoughts at you today, and then we're going to begin to move on to some other things. But I am in chapter 5, verse 7 and 8, and then we're just going to go as long as we can. It says, meanwhile, friends, wait patiently for the master's arrival. This was the whole context of the early disciples, is that they literally thought God would come back at any moment, that they would see Jesus another time. So after he left them, they were despondent. They thought maybe the whole gig was up, and then he comes back and he shows himself to his disciples, to a couple of the women that were very close to him, and then to 500 people. And then he left again. And so they kind of live with this constant sense like, he might come back Tuesday again. And so it affects the way you live. Like if you think about, if you really thought the Lord would come back again next week, it would change things, wouldn't it? You'd probably tend to some inner life issues of holiness. You would not want to be caught, I guess, with your mind in the way that it might normally sort of process information. You might not want to be doing the things that you normally would do. You'd actually be about your Father's business. And so that's the context that he's kind of given us the last words here. The last practical wisdom is wait patiently for the Messiah's arrival. You see farmers do this all the time, waiting for their valuable crops to mature, patiently letting the rain do its slow but sure work. Remember when we started, James? It was about kind of patiently enduring perseverance because God is doing a deep work in us. And so now he's bringing it back around all the way to the end is, hey, Father's coming back any moment. And so tend to your life just like a farmer would tend to their crops. Like keep producing, keep working the land, patiently enduring things because God is coming. And then he says this, be patient like that. Stay steady and strong. Your master could arrive at any time. It's always just, again, a good reminder. Every morning, I've told you guys this, I wake up and I drop to my knees because I have to. My back is so bad I can't just stand up. So I drop to my knees. It used to be a way that I would then get up. I grab the covers on the top of the bed, pull my lazy behind up to my feet, and then slowly begin to walk. But now when I drop down, I take a few moments and I just give the day to the Lord. I usually blubber out something like, I love you, good morning. And then as I stand up, I do a quick little salute, a little sign in for duty. And that's just kind of my way of going, look, you could come back today and I want to be ready. I want to have my perspective like that. And he says, friends, don't complain about each other. Far greater complaint could be lodged against you. The judge is standing just around the corner. Again, it's not only is God coming back, but he's coming back as the great judge. Revelations talks about the Bema seat, which is the judgment of Christ. And we always view the judgment of Christ as kind of like a whooping post, that he's going to grab this big, huge, like cricket bat and start, hey, boys, drop your pants, and we're going to take however many lashes we deserve. But judgment in the scriptures is really about God's judgment upon Satan and upon the evil. But they still use the concept of judgment, like be ready, God's coming. But the beautiful thing about when we receive Christ is that we are no longer under the wrath of God or that type of judgment. And so his judgment will come into the world. He'll finally render Satan and his minions powerless. He'll release us from the mess that sin has caused, and he'll take us to be with him. And then, no, it's not a big line where he takes a cricket bat to us. We are received into his presence because of what Jesus has done on the cross. But that still, even that glorious picture of the Lord not holding all of my stuff against me, that he'll just literally go, look, you believed in my son, so you're good. Even that is a sober judgment. And just like Hideki humbly takes the masters, I feel like that's kind of the approach that we'll have. We'll feel like we just won the greatest event in history. Like we'll go, you gotta, can't believe it. Like I can't believe this is real, and that God really has expressed his love. That there's no longer judgment or wrath over my sin. And so I think we really will. It'll be a beautiful, humble experience. And that still carries some weight of judgment. I don't think knowing that you're going to get off for your sins would make you arrogant, or would make you want to sin more. I think it literally, that picture causes us to want to tend to our inner life even more and to take a much more humble approach. And therefore, I'm not going to waste time holding attitudes against other brothers or sisters or people out in the world. Why would I do that? Because surely I'm just as bad as they are. And so again, James is trying to get us ready for the Lord's coming. Don't waste time holding any grudge against any person in your life, even those that have done terrible wrongs, maybe a past business partner that screwed you out of millions of dollars. Don't even waste another second. They did what they did based on their belief or lack of belief or whatever. It just doesn't matter. Just let it go. Be ready for the Lord's coming. And you don't want to have anything against another brother when the Lord comes up, because what you'll see is how much he's overlooked in us. I remember when I was dating my wife. My wife had been married before she knew the Lord, and she had lived like a normal woman would, without knowledge of God. So there were other men and blah, blah, blah. And I remember I grew up in the church, so I always felt like the greatest way that you prove to God your holiness is you just don't mess around with women. So I stayed pretty clean in that department, but at least in the act of sexuality, I stayed clean. But my mind was, I guess, as trashy as anything else. And so when we started dating, I struggled with her past, believing that I was maybe a pure strain of human. And I went to an old pastor buddy of mine, and right when I was thinking about breaking up with her because of her past, and he just asked me, he said, so in a typical day, Halter, and I was 23, 24, he goes, how many times a day do you actually think about sex and other women that you see? He's like, honestly, tell me. So I was kind of, adding it up, and it's like, I don't know, I guess on an average day, I would say 4 to 10 times a day. I'm probably thinking about that. He's like, that's probably pretty fair. And he said, how often do you think that Cheryl thinks stuff like that? I never had that question posed, and I was thinking, I thought, I don't know, maybe she doesn't. Like, I don't know. He's like, yeah, most women don't think like men do. They don't think about stuff like that all day long. And he said, so you're struggling with her past, but have you ever thought that maybe, even though you've physically not partaken of the act, that you might be far more soiled than she is? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And obviously I did not break up with her and have had a fantastic life. But that's the perspective when we think about other people and we judge them for their sins. What James is really saying is boys, take a moment, take a knee, and take a movie reel of your own life and heart, and realize you never need to. If some guy ripped you off for millions of dollars because he was greedy, do you not have greed in your heart? Would you, apart from what the Lord's done in your life, could you not have done that to some other cat, maybe in another lifetime? Or, of course we could have. And if somebody cheated you out of something, could you have cheated somebody out of something? Of course. If somebody messed up and they broke confidence with you, maybe they even lied or slandered about you, could you not have easily have done that? Of course. And so there's the perspective, guys. Just let it go. And then he continues, verse 10, 11. Take the old prophets as your mentors. So don't just forget about what wise men have said, especially those in Scripture. And great wording on this. He says, they have put up with anything and they went through everything and never once quit, all the time honoring God. Let's read it again, boys. This is, if you're into getting a tattoo in your late age, this is what I'd throw on your, on your arm. They put up with anything and they went through everything and never once quit, all the time honoring God. What a gift life is to those who stay the course. What a gift life is to those who stay the course. And now James is going right back to the well. Guys, just view everything every morning, wake up and understand that the Lord could come at any time. So get everything right now. Don't hold any grudges. Humbly understand what you're going to be given at the day of judgment as the grace of God, and walk humbly, and you'll be ready when the Lord comes. Just such a great word. And then finally it says this in verse 12, and since you know that he cares, let your language always show it. Don't add words like I swear to God. to your words. Don't show your impatience by concocting oaths to hurry God up. Just say yes or no. Just say what is true. That way your language can't be used against you. And then finally, my dear friends, the last couple verses of James. If you know people who have wandered from God's truth, don't write them off. Go after them. Get them back, and you will have rescued precious lives from destruction, prevented an epidemic of wandering away from God. What a great final word. James is going, he's just told us all this stuff about our own heart and life with God. And then he says at this very last thing, hey, go after some brothers. Don't write them off. Recognize that God's been at work in us. It's taken God a long time to make a little bit of change in each one of us. And you've got brothers and sisters out there that are struggling. And so maybe that's what it means to be ready for the Lord's coming, is we're actively pursuing people that we know that God's still pursuing. So many things. I'm going to have you kind of process this week about the things that have really stuck with you with the book of James. And I might even have a question there about brothers, that as we leave this time, we don't just move on to another book of the Bible, but we really humbly give our lives to the Lord every day and go seek out some bros and just call them into the brotherhood, call them into the fraternity, tell them you're on a journey, but that God's doing some work in your life and you love them and just wanted to include them and just see what they say, knowing that you've prayed for them and it's not a cold call, so to speak. Really pray it up, boys, before you go after some other boys and kind of cultivate the soil by hanging out with them. But yeah, let's pursue some guys as we move forward. So blessings to you. Have a great week processing this. Book of James, boom, done. Nice going. And we'll let you know where we're going from here. All right, see ya.